All right, we're gonna start our React Andy segment for this evening. And we're gonna be reacting to somebody for the very first time that we've never reacted to before, who requested for me to react to this video specifically, that being Pally, who is here all the time. Very, very experienced player in the game of Dead by Daylight, like 12K some hours, right? Like, you have like an absurd amount of hours in the game. Like with any creator, please make sure that you click that link that just showed up above my head. If you're on YouTube, it'll be down in the description below if this makes it to the YouTube. Today, they are going to be talking about the real origins of toxicity, and there's a lot of reasons or ways that DBD could have an origin of toxicity. There's a lot of different culprits that it could possibly be. I think for me, just in terms of like my take, is that I think the game's DNA, especially early on, it was inherently built to like bully someone else. Like, it's very much like, I'm gonna use my brand new part to do the gen immediately, and then haha teabag the killer and click at them, and then, you know, vice versa, you know, like, oh, I'm gonna, you know, use old mores and just more out of the game literally immediately, and now you don't get to play. I was gonna say then they WS you, but like WSing wasn't a thing until like the past couple of years. So I don't know. It's a game that just, you know, in its DNA was inherently, at least initially, built for people to bully each other. So I think even though we are taking away a lot of the tools at which people used to do the bullying, it's just kind of like inherently in the game's like heart at this point. So let's see what they say though. Everybody get down.
All right, I got my nerd glasses on. Let's do this. I have played a lot of toxic online games in my lifetime, from mid-2000s Call of Duty to League of Legends, and of course,
Dota, not League.
Dead by Daylight. And after over 12,000 hours in this game, let me tell you, it can be one of the most toxic communities you'll ever experience. Hello everyone, my name is Pally, and I'm using my VTuber today because honestly, being on camera is exhausting to me. I do camera stuff sometimes, but I also paid a lot of money for this thing, so I'm gonna use the absolute crap out of it. Anyway, recently Scott Junn, Spook and Jukes, and the King, among I'm sure many others, had created discussion videos addressing what they believe to be the root cause of toxicity in Dead by Daylight.
I'm not saying these creations specific, but this is just like the easy video to make every once in a while when you don't have any ideas. You're just like, oh, well, what's a constant? DBD's always toxic. I can just make another video about that. Make the numbers. it's just easy. And it always drives engagement. Very heavy discussion. I mean, you could just literally put out like a 30-second video that's like, DBD's toxic and it's the survivor's fault. Or DBD's toxic and it's the killer's fault, and people just people don't know. People don't know not to take the bait. So it's easy. I don't know what this is. That's the comments going from nothing to like a bajillion, but yeah. It's a very easy discussion to have because it just it's very easy bait. People fall for it nonstop.
However, there is one thing none of them talk about. Now, I don't know if it's because they simply didn't want to talk about it, or maybe it just hadn't occurred to them. Maybe they didn't even realize, but I think there's one thing they failed to mention that might be the single biggest overall source of toxicity in the entire DBD community.
You hear that? The biggest source of toxicity? Oh, that was kind of loud.
Dead by Daylight has one of the weirdest communities I've ever seen. Now, don't get it twisted, in most online games, people will come up and make up excuse after excuse for why they lose. However, in DBD, a huge percentage of the community plays the game under the self-proclaimed guise that they are so much better at the game than they actually are, and they will go through great lengths to find something to blame for their losses, rather than just admitting they played poorly or got outplayed, or even just take an L no matter how they lost. I
think DBD has this incredible problem that a lot of the game is like the RNG of the aspects of the game are like truly curbing things not in your favor all the time. Like, even just looking right now in the background, maining Freddy, one of the weakest characters in the game, on Eerie of Crows. Like, you're playing one of the weakest characters in the game versus one of the on one of the most difficult killer maps in the game. Like, there's already so much stacked against you just from this point. So even if you play poorly or make a lot of mistakes, it's very easy to make the jump in logic that, hey, it's the map's fault or it's Freddy being weak fault, because those things are true, but there may be a lot of problems that you have in the middle of the match, like chasing too long, not patrolling your generators, stuff like that you're doing that are making it worse. But it's easy to just blame it all on the game. Sounds like a nightmare. You hear that? Hear that? Hear that joke? You hear that? Will is ashamed of you. He's like, don't worry. He's not actually ashamed. There's not a thought behind those eyes. Long cat.
Always an excuse, and this isn't exclusive to one side, so much so that each side has made up imaginary rule books for the other side to follow. And now the question is, how did this all start in the DBD community? And well, honestly, to explain that, we'll have to familiarize ourselves with a little bit of early DBD history.
Uh-oh.
Now, I'm a rare beast. I've been playing DBD since day zero, since the beta. I've been here since the very beginning, for better or for worse. And back then, the DBD community was very different and it was very small, and we had what some called an honor code of sorts. And to explain just what that honor code was and what it meant.
What I have come to understand about this before they get into it is that because the game did not have a lot of players, you would just like run into the same people all the time. So people could kind of just like police each other, which means harass each other into following house rules, because you're running into the same dude like 13 times. And if he's gonna throw an absolute like piss fit about it, like you don't want to go through that every time you play.
Meant and how it affected the game. Take a look at this short clip from a video Otofu uploaded way back in 2020.
It was a very tight-knit community, and everybody kind of knew each other, and it wasn't just random people that you were playing against. You would run into the same people all the time. Now, if you've ever been a part of a tight-knit community like this, you know that it's kind of natural for forms of kind of an honor code to arise. And that's exactly what happened. For a very, very long time of this game being out, while the Toronto servers were active, a lot of people played the game in a way where they tried to make sure that the other side had fun. Survivors that were running up towards an infinite window that they knew were unfair.
Well, yeah, it's like that's not even then. That's like not true, right? It was fun for me and not for thee. Rules for me and not for thee. Like, you shouldn't use that OP thing because it bothers me. But meanwhile, I'm like abusing infinites and using old BNPs and being obnoxious. It's rules for thee and not for me. So even then, that's like not even.
Players would literally let themselves die instead of vaulting the window because they knew it was unfair and they knew it was unfun. And likewise,
I have talked to a lot of people also who lived in this era and played during this era. This is absolutely not what happened as well. Some people may have done it, but it was absolutely not the majority. Because I've asked about this because like obviously like they're saying like this is like, oh well, people used to have an honor code. People used to play fairly to each other. And I know a lot of people who played old DBD, and I would ask them like, is this a real thing? And like 9 times out of 10 they say no. So like, yeah, there may have been some people who did that, but everybody I've ever asked that played during that, like not everyone, obviously, like I said, most of the time they're like, oh no, not really. Like, so I don't know if this is like revisionist history, if this is like rose-tinted glasses looking at a better time, but like everybody I've ever asked about this has never concurred with this. They were following our code exactly right.
As you saw, the honor code was a set of, I guess, rules that we as a very small community at the time would follow with the idea that everyone could have a good time. And at least that's how it all started, right? Now, I agree with you. This might sound noble and innocent on paper, and largely for a small community like we were at the time, it was. But as DBD grew in popularity and as the community got larger, with also crossplay coming into the game and just the gaming landscape overall changing with new players coming into the game with a different idea of a win and loss condition.
As somebody who played before crossplay came to the game, people sweated their balls off before crossplay. People absolutely sweated their balls off before crossplay. Some of the most miserable games I've ever had in this game happened before crossplay happened. So I don't know, where were the house rules for me? Where was the honor code for me during that time? I don't know.
That honor code that we knew kind of morphed into essentially what you see today, which is basically, to summarize, you need to play this way or you're a giant gaping asshole.
Gaping?
At least sometimes that's what it seems like. At the end of the day, this is ultimately what morphed into the imaginary unwritten rule books that are still used to this day, and as well as the main source of entitlement, and therefore, in my opinion, as someone who has seen the evolution of the DBD community since day one, the main source of toxicity within it. The entitlement that can be observed in the DBD community has spawned all the things that make us all cringe about the community to this day. Sore losers, sore winners, people out here trying to intentionally make the game miserable for others, the constant VMing with the attempt to get under your opponent's skin, a constant influx of low-effort, rage-baiting content on different platforms, a very unhealthy cesspit of nonsense on Twitter, which you should absolutely avoid at all costs, by the way. DBD Twitter sucks. All of it. And that's just the tip of the DBD entitlement iceberg. So there you have it. Entitlement in its purest form. The one thing nobody is mentioning, and what I believe to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, contributing factor to toxicity in the DBD community. Now, the question is, how do we make it better? And unfortunately, the truth is, us as a community, there's a limit to how much we can actually do. There are things in the game itself that fuel the entitled mindset that are almost made to tilt you. That's just, it seems like that's how it is.
I was talking about it earlier.
All we can do is accept the game for what it is in its current state and learn that it's not the end of the world to take an L.
You can't, I've talked about this in plenty of different reacts. So if you're going down the React playlist at some point, you've probably heard this like a bajillion times before. We can't get the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of players in Dead by Daylight together in a town hall. We cannot do that. Like last I checked Steam charts, we were at like on Steam alone, not cross platform, just on Steam alone. We were like 70K players on Steam alone. That group alone, trying to get 70,000 people into a tiny room and be like, actually, this is how we're going to play the game. Like that's not going to happen, much less throwing every single other platform into there as well. Like you can't do it. So I really, really wish people would abandon this idea that we in some way can police the behavior of the other players. At the end of the day, speaking of behavior, it's up to behavior to make tunneling not as good, or to make these obnoxious combinations not as good, or to make regular changes to characters to make them either not overpowered or not so weak that they're not worth playing. It's up to behavior. It's not up to the player and the players. It's not up to the community. They're just using the tools that are available to them. And they paid their $20. They're going to play however they want. You don't have to enjoy it, but they can play however they want. So I don't know why a lot of players just kind of like look at each other and be like, oh, I can police you. And it's like, well, I can't, I don't work at behavior. I can't change those things. So I wish we'd stop looking at each other for that things when it's ultimately just something that the devs can do or should be doing.
It's just a video game.
Yep.
Now, I'm not out here saying you can never get tilted. We all have off days, and tilt is normal, and in many ways it can be healthy depending on the level of tilt. You just don't want to let it go too far. Hell, anyone who knows me has seen me get monumentally tilted at this game, and while I do my best to keep it chill these days, because the anger ain't worth the excess energy, some days are worse than others. And on the flip side of that, this isn't to say that a bit of friendly banter is bad either. You could even argue that banter in and of itself is potentially healthy as well.
Is there a safe? Is it a safe thing to say that there's no one way to play DBD? Yeah, you paid your $20. You play however you want. You play however you want. You do whatever you want. You just got to remember that you don't have to like what the other side is doing either, right? If you want to load up, play nurse, run quad, slow down, I find it boring. I don't enjoy it, but you paid your $20. You do it. I'm going to certainly not have a good time and probably be not the most happy if I'm on the survivor end of that, but like, you do you. It's up to behavior to adjust those things, not you. So that's not up to you. That's up to the devs to change. So you can't police each other with it.
As long as it doesn't go too far, as long as it doesn't get personal, and as long as you're never under any circumstances to say that anyone is lucky. So take it from me. Do yourselves a favor. Try to stop taking the game so seriously. I get it. That's easier said than done sometimes, and I can relate to that more than you realize as someone with breathtaking anger issues. But it's a game. It doesn't matter. Losing in a video game shouldn't be taken personally, and you shouldn't be playing with the sole purpose of making it personal. Just play the game.
Just play the fucking game!
If you want to play for the win, fine, do it. Tunnel, camp, gen rush, pre-drop, whatever. That's what the game is about. And if it ever changes, adapt and figure out the most effective strategies again. It's PvP. At the end of the day, it's just a video game. If you get sacrificed to the entity or all 4 survivors escape, it doesn't matter what side you're on or the outcome of the trial or even how it happened. You still get to wake up the next day. You'll be alive. You'll still be breathing unless, of course, you're asthmatic.
I say this all the time. Like when we have a day like that, we had a day like that, like Saturday, where like every game was like, oops, all meta. Like we would only have like out of 16 perks, there'd only be like 1 or 2 off meta perks on the entire team. So like, I don't know, it was just one day, right? It was just one day. And then, you know, now that it's in the middle of the week, Monday's games were fine. Today's games were fine. It's like, there's some sweaty ones here or there, but like, it's just one day. One day. You wake up, try it again tomorrow, or wake up, take a break, try it again at the end of the week, and then you're good. It doesn't matter too much. Doesn't matter too much.
Like me. And it's always a new day. So knock it off, nerds.
New day.
There's no reason for the community to be like this so goddamn always. Now, I ain't out here saying you gotta hold hands and sing Kumbaya or anything like that, but just chill out. If you get tunneled, the player who did it isn't an asshole. If you get gen rush, the team aren't giant pieces of shit. They're just playing the video game. If you lose, just GG next. It ain't that deep. I guess what I'm trying to say is at the end of the day, act your age, not your shoe size. That's it.
I like that.
That's all I got. That's my opinion on the matter. And if you would like to catch me live,
this is like a completely different aside than like the point you presented, but it's the what my brain took away. It's like one of the strangest things I have found about the Dead by Daylight community is that disproportionate maturity between their age and their maturity level. Like, you would think by the way a lot of these people are acting that they're all like teenagers, right? Like they're all like, you know, they gotta clearly be like 14 to 18-year-olds. They gotta be like kids. But a lot of these are like 20 to 30 somethings that are just like getting so bent out of shape and freaked out about this game. And it's like, it's so weird. It's so weird. It's something that would be like my, like that's my big thing I want to debunk. Like, not what is toxicity, where does it come from, but why is the maturity level among the community generally below their age level, like almost consistently? That's so weird. And it's just like, it's something that no matter what or where I go, it's always an issue. I have like, there'll be like people like legitimately in their 30s, like forming little mean girl packs or being nasty to somebody in the end game chat. I'm like, homie, you're like 34. What are you doing? I'm gonna touch upon this in a very like over there sort of way and try to, you know, not touch it directly sort of way. But there was recently an incident where 2 big streamers played against each other, and one said some very nasty comments about the other's mother. Homie who said that, the guy who was that said the nasty comments about the dude's mom, is in his like mid-30s. And it's like the caveat here is that the person he said it to, their mom had been through some medical troubles, and very serious ones. So it was like a very fresh, like traumatic thing for them to go for their mom. And like, dude's in his like mid-30s, like early to mid-30s. What is he doing? What you at that age should understand the things I say and do affect other people. It's so wild. Like, people should know better and they just don't. Yeah, that gets into a whole other like big life stuff of like, well, they surround themselves with people who are going, yeah, you're good, yeah, you're fine, you can say those things, or like their parents just kind of let them get away with everything. There's a lot of socialization things that go into that, but this isn't Education 300 at the collegiate level. This is a this is a DVD stream. So we're not gonna get too deep into that. I could, but yeah, it's like a middle school cafeteria. It's very, I don't know, it's wild. It's just like people that should know better don't, and it seems to be like a consistent problem among the community of people acting below their age. And it's just like, it's really interesting and something that I don't think I can ever grasp the answer for, but it would be something I would be tremendously interested in knowing, because that is particularly very, very odd. Very, very odd. Yeah, this is an excellent, great video. I like that you hit on the big entitlement aspect. I like that there was some sort of challenges to the idea that like, oh, well, PvP players used to all just pat each other on the back, and then we used to be a nice, friendly community where there was never any issues. And it's like, that's, a lot of people paint it that way, almost in a sense to kind of like, I don't know, continue to kind of like endorse that entitlement in a weird way, right? It's like, well, everything used to be great, and then everybody ruined it. It's like, it's kind of like trying to push that point so they can continue to endorse that that entitlement. But I don't know, it's one of those things that's like, it's never going to be fixed, and it's never going to change. It's something that like we just have to find a way to live with. We can try over and over to like theorize like, why is it happening, how do we combat it, but realistically it's always going to be there. So it's more about how do we live with it and not so much how do we fight it. Obviously don't do it yourself and don't partake yourself. That's something we can do, but it seems that, you know, for whatever reason this issue is here, it's here to stay, and it's just about how we react to it at the end of the day.